Good morning and welcome again to Summit. We all know that the month of May is very significant and important in Nigeria because it's the Democracy Day, 29th of May of every year. And this year is no different. But one thing that is very peculiar about this year's Democracy Day is that we'll be gaining insights, evaluating, giving a scorecard to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's second year in office. And that's what we're going to be doing this morning on Summit, analyzing the 2 years in office of President Bola Tinubu. And I have with me someone who's well-versed in national issues because he's also a journalist and he's also very vast in policies and laws, constitutional issues in Nigeria. Mr. Ademola Adegoke. He's also a public affairs analyst. You're welcome, sir.
Good morning, madam.
Thank you for coming on to share your thoughts.
And thanks for having me once again.
You're welcome,
a pleasure
sir.
being on Summit once again.
Thank you. All right, so let's first talk about the economic policies. Okay. We know there's been one policy after the other in the last 2 years. So when we talk about these economic policies, how do you assess them, especially on how it has actually impacted the people of Nigeria?
Well, we know that on assumption of office of this government from the very first day on May 29, the government made a very, very critical policy shift. They took a critical, twin decision that represented a major policy shift in the country at inauguration, and that specifically we are talking about the merging of the exchange rate market, and then floating of the naira, put in another way, and then the removal of the fuel subsidy. And so those two decisions came to Nigeria came to Nigerians as a rude shock because we were not prepared for it. And of course, expectedly, it had far-reaching impact on the economy. It had far-reaching impact on the economy, and so far, the impact is still being felt. But it now depends on, there are people, or let me say, there are sectors of the economy that you can say are still writhing under the pains or the pangs of those two decisions. And there are also sectors that have become the better for it. You understand? So if you look at agriculture, for example, I was reading a document yesterday, and I saw that, and in that document it was revealed that since that decision, that decision has become a major turnaround for the agric sector, especially people in those in the rural areas, because agricultural goods, the prices of agricultural products have shot up, and farmers have become the better for it. So if you talk to the farmers in the rural areas, they probably will say that, oh, it's been good for them, because I learned that in that document I read that a ton of cocoa, pre-2023 was being sold at about 1.8 million naira. Today, as we speak, a ton of cocoa is hovering around 14 million naira. So that has turned out for better life for the farmers. So it depends on who one talks to, but for the fixed salary earner, it has not been easy.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy because the salary is fixed, and then meanwhile, the impact of those two decisions are still, it's still biting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because
that has been the situation.
Yeah, based on what you have just said, that it's of advantage to one sector and a disadvantage to another,
some others.
To some others. All right, so in addressing issues of inflation, unemployment, and poverty, these economic policies, have they helped in any way? Or are they at an advantage in those areas?
I will say, for me, I will say they have helped, but that is not to say that there are still not, areas that we can improve on.
Yeah.
Do you understand? For example, you and I know what was happening in the foreign exchange, with the foreign exchange system before 2023. Government was using taxpayers' money to defend the naira, to sort of, if you like, regulate the exchange rate of the naira. But meanwhile, some people were, some people were helping themselves, to they were helping themselves with this, making so much money off Nigerians. And if one cannot get any example, at least the example of the CBN governor then, Emefiele, suffices, because we can now see, from revelations after he left office. So we now saw that the former system was just beneficial to some people, and now when it was stopped, government could save more money from that. And then even the fuel subsidy too. When you look at the fuel subsidy too, government was subsidizing for poor Nigerians. But then you discover that majority or the bulk of the money for the subsidy was ending up in the pockets of some very tiny few who were smiling to their banks, who were making so much money. I don't know, that senator came on here, I have forgotten, this senator in Zamfara, and he's a former governor, and he said that, Alun Dume is from Yobe, and he said that he went to the president and said, when we stop this, we are tired of making money. So you discover that, so you will say that for me, those two decisions, the reforms, the economic reforms, if they had not been introduced, then I don't know.
But even the reforms has not helped employment. There's still a high level of employment.
Yes,
when you look at issues of poverty, IMF has just released a report that our policies are not working.
For me, as a Nigerian, I have issues with IMF and their data.
Okay.
You understand? Because if you base your data on urban dwellers, you understand, Lagos, Ibadan, Port Harcourt, Kano, and the rest of them. I have just cited the example of the impact it has had on the rural communities. You understand? So for me, IMF, we need to, and let me tell you, let me use the street lingo. The history, let me use the street lingo. Who IMF help? Who they help? You understand? To use that lingo. And you will see that all their prescriptions over for decades, all IMF prescriptions for developing countries, whether you talk of Brazil, you talk of so many other countries, so many other countries, Zimbabwe and the rest of them. Which one has ever worked? Do you understand? It is countries that take their destiny in their own hands and forge ahead, with their goal, with focus on their goal. that have really made it. If you look at China, China did not become what China became through IMF prescriptions. So I have issues with IMF, you understand? I am not a believer in their figures, that it is not working. Because by now, only God knows where Nigeria will have been. You understand? Because at the end of, if those decisions were not taken then, but talking about employment, let me come back to your question about employment. You've talked about employment. I have just mentioned that in the rural, that the agro sector is picking up. It's picking up, and our agricultural products are becoming even competitive in the international market, because of the one thing that devaluation does is that it makes your local goods, cheaper for the international market. You understand? That is what devaluation does, and I think that is already working in the agricultural sector. So if you are talking, and I in that document too, I also read that a lot of people are now going into farming. That's a sort of employment, and the farmer that makes more money now can also employ more hands. But in terms of maybe the formal sector, you understand, there may be issues because the running cost, and capital expenditure and all of that. But they have gone up. So it's a mixed grill for me. It is not, for me, I'm not seeing this as a total failure that many Nigerians will want us to see it as. And the only thing that we may be talking about is that maybe there is need for much more commitment, even much more transparency on the part of government itself.
That's another place where I'm going. Talking about government's commitment to transparency and accountability, how would you rate it in the last 2 years?
I will not say it has been that impressive. You understand? It has not been impressive, because it is one thing for you to preach to people, that this is the direction we are going, and the people are ready to actually, support you, back you up towards that direction, towards going to that direction, and they now see you doing some other things. You understand? Because we are still behaving, the cost of governance still remains too high. There are so many things we can cut down on that we are still embracing.
And the president even mentioned a lot of things that they were going to cut down on. That was, I think, 2024. Talking about traveling expenses, medicals, having an entourage and things like that.
So
but
we still don't get to see that. You understand? So to that extent, I think that there so much work still needs to be done in that area. If you are asking the citizens to tighten their belt, and they are ready, and they see you living large, you understand, growing pot belly every day, you understand. So that is the issue, you understand. But as for the propriety or the appropriateness of the reforms, for me, they are needed. But it is the way they are being pursued now that may be an issue. But those two reforms, because let me tell you, if those two decisions had not been taken in 2023, only God knows where the country will be now. And as a fallout of those of the economic reforms, have you forgotten that pre-2023, about maybe over close to 30 states, I have forgotten the figure now, 20-something states were actually finding it so difficult to pay salaries of workers. Now, the states have much more money than they had before, and issue of payment of salary is not their problem now.
But then many of them have not started paying the new
wage. And that is where this, what I said earlier on, now comes in. You understand? That we can cut down on so many things to save costs. And I have told you that in that regard, I am rating government, and not just, and the assessment we are making, let us not forget that this is not just Tinubu
It's
that
all
is spending.
inclusive.
It's all inclusive.
Yeah.
It's not just Tinubu that is spending 2 years, that is attaining, 2 years in office now.
Yeah.
Or the governors too.
Yeah.
So it has to, whatever assessment we are making at the national level must trickle down to the sub-national level.
Yeah.
So for me,
on the issue of transparency and accountability.
I am rating them below average.
All right. Now let's go to the issue of security. The security challenges. We know it has been there.
It's been there.
But in the last 2 years of President Tinubu's administration, have their efforts, curbed issues of insecurity? Because there has been increased attacks. We know that there has been increased attacks in the last few months. Terrorists, farmers' headers, clashes and all that in recent months.
You see, there are two approaches. There are two major approaches to security. You talk about the kinetic approach, and then you talk about the non-kinetic approach. There are security. It's not all security issues that will be dealt with kinetically. I mean, carrying arms and using the force of arms to suppress or to deal with. There are some policies that you will make. You understand? There are existential issues that will be addressed that will impact on security. And what do I mean? If you look at part of the security issues that we are, or the bulk of it that we are having in this country, you will still talk about the poverty level. You will talk about, the level of education, the level of enlightenment, and all of that. All this, will come together to affect security. So in the last 2 years, I will say that on the area of the kinetic aspect of security enforcement, the government tried, you understand, because that's this present administration. You will discover that except for the sudden upsurge of the last 2 months now, at a time everything went down so well. You understand? But you see, this is where I am going. If you kinetic approach, we deal with the symptom of insecurity. But the non-kinetic approach, we go to the very root of it. You understand? If you are dealing with the symptom alone and you are not going to the cause of it, of course you may succeed in quelling it for some time, but definitely suddenly there will be the kind of upsurge that we are witnessing presently. Now, if you look at what has been happening in the Middle Belt, Plateau and Benue specifically, you discover that it's a problem of deep-seated distrust between the various communities. You understand, especially the Fulanis and the natives there. You understand? So it's been a deep-seated problem that may not necessarily be treated, through kinetic approach alone. And so what do we expect government to do? Yes, there will be the kinetic approach, but if you do not address those deep-seated issues of, distrust and all of that, mutual distrust, it will continue to rear its head. And that is what is happening in Plateau. And so government, in addressing it, will have to look at, using, proper engagement of the locals, you understand? And then this issue of land, we have said the government of Tinubu, in wanting to address this issue of farmer clashes, even went ahead, first time in this country, went ahead and established Ministry of Livestock. You understand? So, but we are not seeing much of that. Perhaps if that ministry goes into operation and does what it's supposed to do, so that the issue of grazing, the issue of ranching, you understand, will be well addressed, we may have less of this. And then also, you also talk about really the part of insecurity that is caused by religious fanaticism. How do we address that? Who do we engage? You understand? Because who do we engage so that this can be addressed? And then our youth too, like you have said, the issue of unemployment. You understand? If people are well engaged, our citizens will not be they will not be easy prey.
Yeah.
They will not become easy prey. You know, they will not become easy prey for some people to now want to lure into their group or whatever. So these are issues. So these are all non-kinetic issues. If you have employment in the land, you know, there will be. So for that, on the kinetic approach, I will say the government has tried its best. Maybe it is not, but on the non-kinetic approach, much still needs to be done.
The president was in Katsina recently, and like the former president Buhari, he was talking tough. You know, addressing the security agencies, telling them no, they must have to bring insecurity to an end. And you also know that the governor of Zamfara State, Borno State, they have been crying out that these people are regrouping, and there seems to be even a little bit of difference in these groups. From what, if you want to go by what the Zamfara State governor is saying, and he's been appealing to the government to
you know that
rise up.
It's a multifaceted issue. One, you know, there is also the international dimension to this issue of security. The international dimension to it, and the international dimension to it, we also have both kinetic and non-kinetic. There has to be better engagement at the international level, synergy of efforts between us and our neighbors. You understand? So that these people, they come into our country from, you know, using our porous borders. What joint effort are we going to make to ensure that our borders become more secure, and then, you know, these people cannot, you know, they won't be able to come into they won't have the kind of free reign they have into our country. So it's a lot, the issue of security. So you don't just focus on, you don't just focus on the kinetic angle alone, telling the security forces you have to do this, you have to do that. Even if you equip the security agencies with state of the art, you know, arms and ammunition, if those other issues are not addressed, the issue of insecurity will continue to.
Does the body language of this administration speak that they are willing to go all out?
You see, I can see, let me put it this way, that I can see more words than action.
I can see more words than action. All right, so because there's so many things, but we'll just see how far we can go on this episode of that evaluation. Okay, so what opportunities do you think this administration can leverage on to drive growth and development in the country going forward?
What opportunities they can leverage on? One, Nigerians, they can leverage. One thing that I know that Nigerians are. We are so resilient. We are ready to confront challenges, and that is otherwise. In some other countries, what is happening here could have led to serious, socio-political upheaval. But because we are resilient, but government should not overstretch that. And that is why government should leverage on our resilience as a people to ensure that, before our patience thinks out, something drastic is done. And the opportunities they can leverage on our human resource. We have the human resource. Do you understand? We also have the natural endowment that government can, just some policy, some critical policy decisions that we put things in place. They can leverage on that. So for me, there are so many things that the government can leverage on. One, so for them to secure more, a higher level of citizens' trust, so that, because government does not exist in a vacuum. You exist for the citizens, and when you lose the trust of the people, that is a big problem. So they should leverage on the willingness of Nigerians to support them. Nigerians are ready to support them when we are convinced that they are going the right direction. So they should leverage on that. They should leverage on our human resource. Nigeria is said to be a country that has the highest, or one of the countries that has the highest the highest number of youth population in the country. That is something to leverage on. It is something to leverage on. So there are things that we can leverage on to drive growth and development.
All right, so on a lighter note, has the administration's economic policies had a positive impact on your lifestyle and in your community?
in my own community.
Yes, on your lifestyle and community.
On my own lifestyle. Well, I will say that it is neither there nor there. It is neither here nor there. It is neither here nor there. But here we are. We have adjusted.
Of course,
here we are. So we are still trudging on, believing that better days are ahead. Better days will come. So for the community, and that is just the irony of it. There are people you will talk to. You understand, today they will say they've never had it this good. And look at it.
That's true. That's true.
And
I have one person like that.
There are people we will talk to that will say we've never had it this good. And I've given you the example of farmers in the rural communities. They are living large. And this has been confirmed not just through the document I read, but from one or two people that are right there.
Yes, this person I'm talking about too is into rice.
That is what I'm saying.
He sells rice. Rice paddy.
Right. That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. If you are a cocoa farmer now, you understand this is the best period for you. It is the best period ever. If you are even palm oil and the rest of them. So it depends. Maybe it is, those of us, who are in the cities and all of that are complaining. But because when you look at it, for those in agri sector and in other business concerns, it is what you buy that you sell, and they are smiling to.
All right.
They are smiling
to
their banks.
So, any word of encouragement for Nigerians, especially in this democracy month in Nigeria?
Well, the only thing that I will still want to tell Nigerians is that it is not yet over until it is over. Let us not give up hope. Hope is the only thing that keeps a man alive, that keeps a man going, And having hope is not, the absence of challenges.
Exactly.
It is the ability to move forward, even in spite of challenges. So in spite of the challenges in the country, let us continue to move ahead, to, surge forward, and believing that even as difficult as things are, some people are still making it. And then for us, as ordinary Nigerians, let us not make ourselves prey for politicians to use. We should not turn ourselves to pawns, in their chessboard. Yeah. We should, when it is time for election, we should vote according to our conscience, not, according to peanuts that they bring. This is my advice for Nigerians. I wish Nigerians better days, and I wish the government more wins and successes for the next 2 years of the administration.
Thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you.
coming to share your
Thank
thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's our discussion this morning in assessing and giving a scorecard